Good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Devarim. It is also Shabbos Chazon. And even though Shabbos is a time of joy, happiness, serenity, peace, we're already beginning to feel the pangs of Tisha B'Av, which will begin right after Shabbos concludes. I think that it is noteworthy and fortuitous, perhaps, a divine providence showing itself quite clearly that just in the last few days, Israeli archaeologists have revealed that they discovered a portion of the remaining of the walls of Jerusalem from the First Temple period, from Bayis Rishon, and that is a huge development. And as we see the remains of the walls of Jerusalem, which were breached and destroyed mostly by the Babylonian invaders, we are reminded of the 2,000 years of exile that we are currently still battling, and it gives us a sense, hopefully, of strength and hope to persevere, that the blessings that we have currently experienced in our national life, in the advent of the establishment of the State of Israel, in the land of Israel, will ultimately, soon in our days, conclude with the ultimate and final and complete Geula, B'mehera v'yameinu. The Parsha opens with famous pasuk, Eila Dvarim. These are the words that Moshe spoke to the Jewish people in a whole series of places, Tofel, Lavan, Di Zahav. One of the places mentioned is Chatzeros. Now, this is Moshe's introduction to his grand soliloquy at the end of his life. He's giving the people his final words, his words of inspiration and encouragement, because as he is about to depart the national scene, the Jewish people will have to learn to live independently, with new leadership and without Moshe's direct line, as it were, to the Ribono Shel Olam himself. One of the places mentioned is Chatzeros, and the rabbis wonder, where is this place? What is this place Chatzeros that is being referenced here? Because each of these places is not simply a geographic location. It is meant to reference an important and significant event or idea, a way for Moshe to hint at something, so that way the people could reflect on this idea and better themselves and strengthen themselves going forward. So what is the idea or event that is being hinted to for Bnei Yisrael to reflect upon in Chatzeros? Rashi tells us Chatzeros is where the Korach insurrection occurred, where Korach planned and executed his rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. The only problem, and that's quite a bit to reflect upon, but the only problem with that is that the Torah tells us that the Korach rebellion occurred in Paran, not in Chatzeros. The Maharal says, well, it might be true that the Korach rebellion occurred in Paran, but Paran is also listed here, and it's listed for another issue, and that is for Bnei Yisrael to reflect upon the sin of the spies, which also is associated with Paran. So in order to make clear these two significant events, Moshe assigns them two different named places. And Chatzeros is very close to Paran, and so that's good enough to remind us of the Korach rebellion, and Paran will remind us of the sin of the spies. A lot to reflect upon. Rashi, however, gives us a second answer in his own parish, and he says that there's a kal, and he's citing the Sifrei. There's a kal v'chomer. There's a lesson to be learned over here. What did happen in Chatzeros that is recorded clearly in the Torah? Well, Miriam speaks ill of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Sifrei says, look at how Hashem treated Miriam. She was punished. She was not given a pass for speaking ill of her baby brother Moshe. And if Miriam, who was a righteous woman, was not given a pass for speaking ill of Moshe, then most certainly you, Korach, anybody else, will not be given a pass speaking ill of Moshe, or in really speaking ill of anyone who was a righteous person, who in a position of power and authority, but not just anyone who is righteous in a position of power of authority, but to speak ill of others. So here we have Chatzeros as an inference, as a hint to the Korach rebellion. In a few different ways we get there. The Orach Chaim, however, takes an entirely different tack. It says, don't think about Korach, don't think about rebellions. Think about what the word Chatzeros means. This is not referencing a historical event or a geographic location. The word Chatzeros comes from the word Chatzer. Chatzer means a courtyard. This, says the Orach Chaim, is part of a litany of events, a litany of words that Moshe is using to hint at survival techniques and thrival techniques. What's a thrival technique? How the Jewish people are going to survive and thrive as Bnei Yisrael. And each one of these places mentioned in the Pasuk is a hint to another important principle of vital Jewish living. Chatzeros is to remind us of Chatzar Hashem, the courtyard of Hashem, which of course is the Beis Hamikdash, the place where a Jew and the Ribono Shel Olam can commune in the most deep and intimate and profound way. But absent the Beis Hamikdash, the Chatzar Hashem can be found in the Batei Medrash. If it's not the Beit Hamikdash, it's in the Beit Hamidrash. It is in the study hall. It is in the place where we connect to the Ribono Shel Olam through the words of the Torah that He gave us, the only thing that we have that gives us any inkling about Ritzon Hashem, the will of the Ribono Shel Olam in the world, and the will of the Ribono Shel Olam for each of us. Chatzeros, says the Orach Chaim, does not remind the Jewish people of some terrible deed that we engaged in that we must reflect upon in order to succeed better in the future. But it is indeed a reminder, a positive reminder of what we need to do in order to live powerful, vital, and healthful Jewish lives, and ultimately vital, powerful, and healthy lives eternally for our souls, says the Orach Chaim. However, I'd like to share with you one final approach, also looking at the etymology of this word Chatzeros. Chatzeros, as we said, means a chatzer, which means a courtyard. A chatzer in halacha is defined as a place by its walls. That's a chatzer. Its walls, its limitations, it is a place that has barriers between one person and another. That's what a chatzer is. Chatzeros is a courtyard defined by its walls. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, be careful of the Chatzeros. Be careful of defining each other by what separates us, by how we are different from one another. Be very, very careful by looking at one another through the prism of what separates us, of the camps that we are and the camps that the other person is in. Because when we look at ourselves through the chatzer, the lens of the chatzer, those are the seeds ultimately for machlokas, for division, for dispute, for conflagration within the Jewish people, for the Korach rebellion. Indeed, isn't that what happened all those years ago, 2,000 years ago, when Bnei Yisrael, our ancestors, the Jews, during the Second Temple period, at the end of Bayis Sheni, were unable to coordinate with one another, and that ultimately led to a huge breakup within the community, camps fighting one another, and that was a tragedy in and of itself that bore another tragedy, that is the Roman invasion and the Roman conquest of Yerushalayim. The Chatzer mentality of the Jews in Yerushalayim brought about the demolition of the Chatzer Hashem, of the Beis Hamikdash, of the walls that surrounded Jerusalem, that united Klal Yisrael. It seems to me that only when we learn to transcend those walls will the walls of Yerushalayim that unite us be rebuilt. As Rabbi Yochanan Zweig, continuing this thought, as Rabbi Yochanan Zweig points out, the man who is credited with the idea of the institution of the Eruv which allows us to unite and merge our domains on Shabbos, is none other than Shlomo HaMelech, who Chazal refer to as Melech Shahashalom Shalom, the king who peace is within him. Peace, comity, amity, and unity are accomplished when we create unity, when we transcend the barriers, when we transcend the differences, and we transcend the the Chatzer walls. And when we finally figure out how to transcend the walls that divide us, then the rest of the walls, in addition to the remnant that has just been found, the rest of the walls of Yerushalayim will be built as well. And those are the walls that will unite us. Good Shabbos to all.